Hello, Miss Reed and fellow classmates. Today I'll be discussing whether philosophy is useful or not. So, there's two sides to that argument. There is the brainstormer, who says that it is useful, and there's the bullshitter, who thinks that philosophy is not useful and it's a waste of time. The brainstormer will be, invested in the argument and they'll believe in it. They'll probably have done, research on it, and they're really going to try and come up with good points to support their argument and you know further their knowledge. If they're arguing with you, they'll it's just to see how far they can go, see how good their points are, stuff like that. However, a bullshitter won't take that approach to an argument. Their approach to an argument would be to win. They aren't looking to further their knowledge. They're not really personally invested in it. They just want to beat you. They're looking at it like a game, like philosophy is a game. They think it's like it's rhetorical, and philosophy doesn't really have any real world aspects to it. It's just whatever. It's just talk. And even though a bullshitter has certain aspects of a relativist and a skeptic, the skeptic, even though they believe that you can't come to a real, true answer to something, they will, that's what they believe. So they're going to come up with good points to contradict what you have to say, and they're not going to be like a bullshitter who's just saying stuff for the sake of it. They're not just being a skeptic because an actual skeptic believes in what they're saying. And relativist, even though bullshitters also have an aspect of that, relativist believes that knowledge and like the usefulness of knowledge is context based. So even though all knowledge may not be useful for one certain topic, different parts of knowledge will be useful for different topics, and they'll come up for different arguments on stuff like that. Like for example, obviously chemistry wouldn't be very useful for a person who is going into business. That knowledge is context based. Chemistry is useful for some things, but also not for others. But they don't think that knowledge is useless. They think that we should have it and that it's a good thing. It's a good tool to use. And so another part of brainstorming and bullshitting is the intellectual robotry and the rhetorical robotry. So intellectual robotry is like habitual indulgence in clever words for their own sake. They when they're speaking, they sort of lose sight of the person they're speaking to, and it's as if they're speaking to sort of like a universal, like a universe of ideas instead of like to another person. And for rhetorical robotry, they're not really committed to any ideology, and they don't really overestimate the power of logic. So those are some contradicting points. I think that philosophy is useful and has real world repercussions. One of them being, what is a person? That is a very big question, and some of the real world repercussions that has are abortion laws and animal rights laws. Because of how we define a person, we can include or exclude certain animals, or include or exclude fetuses, which if you do that, then you could possibly think that some animals are persons, in which case they would be protected by human rights laws, or you could think that animals are not persons, in which case human rights laws don't apply to them at all, and like you can do tests on monkeys and stuff like that. And also for abortion laws, people think that if you include a fetus in person, in your definition of a person, then you would think that there's no time that you would ever get an abortion, because obviously if you think a fetus is a person, then that would be murder. But if you don't think that a fetus is a person, then you would think that it is okay to have an abortion. So through this, I would say that philosophy is something useful for study, and that it is not a waste of time. Thank you for listening.